I was halfway through my morning coffee when the sound of sirens shattered the peace. Not one, not two, but 3 police cars came skidding into my gravel driveway, kicking up a cloud of dust so thick it looked like something out of an apocalypse movie. I blinked, trying to process what I was seeing. The only crime happening on my property was me trying to enjoy my coffee in peace. Then, out of one of the cruisers, stomping like she was leading a military raid, came the last person I expected, a short, furious woman gripping a clipboard like it was a weapon. Her oversized sunglasses sat perched on her nose like she was trying to hide from the law instead of calling them. And then, in the loudest, most self-important voice imaginable, she screamed, "This man has an illegal electric fence. He's endangering the entire community." I stared. The cops, who looked just as confused as I felt, hesitated before fanning out like they were expecting to uncover a major crime scene. Meanwhile, I stood there in my pajama pants, coffee in hand, absolutely dumbfounded. I knew exactly who this woman was. I'd never met her in person, but I'd heard the drunken rants from my neighbor about Karen, the HOA tyrant from 2 miles away. Her jurisdiction didn't even reach this far, yet here she was, acting like she owned my land. She pointed dramatically at my fence, warning the officers about its dangerous, inhumane nature. Now, to be fair, my fence was electric, but it wasn't some cartoonishly overpowered, fry a person to a crisp kind of thing. It was a standard livestock fence, the kind farmers used to keep coyotes and stray dogs from messing with their animals. Completely legal, barely strong enough to shock anything bigger than a raccoon, and most importantly, none of Karen's damn business. One of the officers, who already looked like he was done with this nonsense, turned to me. "Sir, we got a call about an illegal hazard on your property." I took a sip of my coffee before answering. "You mean my fence?" The officer nodded. I gestured toward it. "It's legal. I've got all the permits. Want to see?" Karen let out an outraged gasp, jabbing a manicured finger in my direction. "He's lying. I have photographic proof that this fence is a death trap." I exhaled slowly, already regretting that I had woken up today. I thought that would be the end of it. The cop saw there was no crime, Karen made a fool of herself, and I figured she'd slink back to whatever HOA kingdom she ruled over, nursing her wounded pride. I was wrong. 2 days later, I walked out to check my mail and found my mailbox stuffed to the brim. At first, I thought it was junk, credit card offers, local ads, the usual. But as I flipped through the stack, my blood pressure started to rise. These weren't just random letters. They were official-looking violation notices, fines, and legal threats, all stamped with the logo of an HOA I didn't belong to. According to Karen, my hazardous fencing was in violation of neighborhood aesthetics, posed a serious safety risk, and if I didn't take it down immediately, I would face escalating fines and potential legal action. I actually laughed out loud. These people had zero authority over my land. They might as well have sent me monopoly money fines. Shaking my head, I tossed the paperwork onto my kitchen counter and took a long sip of coffee. I had a few options: ignore it, lawyer up, or have a little fun. Because if Karen thought she could intimidate me with empty threats, she had another thing coming. Later that afternoon, I made a visit to Bill Henderson, my neighbor and the unofficial historian of local gossip. I found him sitting on his porch, sipping a beer while his goat, Sparky, gnawed on an old boot. I dropped the stack of HOA nonsense onto the table beside him. "You won't believe this," I said. Bill squinted at the papers, then let out a wheezing laugh. "Oh, they really don't know when to quit, do they? She's sending me fines from an HOA I don't even belong to," I said, shaking my head. "That's not even legal, right?" "It's not," Bill chuckled, taking another sip of his beer. "But that's never stopped Karen before." I raised an eyebrow. "She's done this before?" Bill leaned back in his chair, looking far too amused. "Son, Karen's been running that HOA like a dictatorship for the last 10 years. She once fined a guy for painting his door the wrong shade of blue. Threatened to sue a family because their kids' chalk drawings on the sidewalk were decreasing property values. Hell, she even tried to have a retired veteran evicted for putting up an American flag without her approval. I let out a low whistle. And no one stopped her? Oh, plenty have tried, Bill said, shaking his head. But Karen thrives on conflict. You push back, she goes nuclear. He wasn't wrong. Because later that night, Karen's war escalated. Just as I was about to turn in for the night, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. From a number I didn't recognize. I pressed play, and a shrill, furious voice filled my ears. You are a menace to this community. Your illegal fence has already hurt one poor, innocent animal. What happens when it kills a child? I have spoken to the county, and if you do not take it down immediately, I will make sure you suffer the consequences. You have 48 hours. Consider this your final warning. I stared at my phone. Then, slowly, I rewound the message and played it again. She was completely unhinged. And the best part? My security cameras had recorded everything. Because just a few hours earlier, I had checked my footage out of curiosity and caught Karen sneaking onto my property. Dressed in black like a cartoon villain, she had been crouching near my fence, dragging a dog crate behind her. From the looks of it, she was trying to release an animal near my fence, probably to stage some kind of fake cruelty evidence. But Karen's perfect plan had one major flaw. As she struggled to open the crate, she tripped over a rock and face-planted straight into the dirt. Then, in what could only be described as poetic justice, she staggered backward and accidentally touched the fence herself. The zap wasn't strong, barely more than a static shock, but the way she shrieked and flailed, you would have thought she'd been struck by lightning. I saved the footage immediately. Now, I had a choice. I could let this go, let her embarrass herself and move on. Or, I could turn the tables and show Karen exactly what happens when you mess with the wrong person. I grinned. It was time to have a little fun. The next morning, I woke up to find my phone buzzing non-stop. Missed calls. Voicemails. Text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. At first, I figured it was spam, some telemarketer on a rampage, but then I opened my messages. How could you do this to innocent animals? You should be ashamed. We're starting a petition to take your fence down. You're a monster. Hope you enjoy torturing wildlife, you sicko. I frowned, scrolling through the flood of hate. What the hell was going on? Then I saw the link. A Facebook post, made in the HOA's private group, one that, surprise surprise, I wasn't a part of. But apparently, plenty of people in town were. And thanks to a well-placed informant, a neighbor who was just as sick of Karen's antics as I was, I got my hands on the full post. This man is a threat to our community. He has installed a high-voltage death trap on his land, and innocent animals are already suffering. Just last night, a helpless dog was electrocuted by his barbaric fence. We have video proof. It is up to us to protect our neighborhood before it's too late. Sign the petition now to demand its removal. Beneath the post was a grainy, low-quality video of an animal, a dog, maybe, convulsing on the ground. It looked horrifying, until I realized something. It wasn't my fence. Hell, it wasn't even my land. Karen had ripped a video off the internet, slapped a dramatic caption on it, and called it proof. And the worst part? People were buying it. The comments section was a mess of outraged homeowners demanding action. This is disgusting. That man should be arrested. What if a child wanders onto his property and gets electrocuted? We need to report this to the county immediately. This cannot stand. I exhaled slowly, tapping my fingers against the counter. Karen wasn't just playing dirty, she was trying to ruin me. But here's the thing about lies. They fall apart the moment you shine a light on them. So I did exactly that. I called my lawyer first. Then, while waiting for him to draft a formal response, I pulled up my security footage, the same footage that caught Karen sneaking onto my land and getting zapped like a dumb cartoon villain. A few carefully edited clips later, I had my own video ready to go. Nothing aggressive. Nothing too obvious. Just a simple caption. When your neighbor trespasses on your land at night and finds out electric fences work as advertised. I posted it and waited. And boy, did the internet deliver. Within hours, my video was everywhere. People weren't just laughing, they were tearing Karen apart. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen. How do we nominate this woman for a Darwin Award? This lady really broke into someone's land just to get zapped by a legal fence. I'm crying. As the views climbed, Karen's credibility took a nosedive. Even some of the HOA members who had backed her started deleting their comments, realizing they'd been played. But Karen? Oh, she wasn't done. If she couldn't beat me with fake outrage, she was going to try something even dirtier. 2 nights later, my security system alerted me to movement on my property. I pulled up the live feed, expecting to see a raccoon or maybe Sparky the goat wandering too close to the fence. Instead, I saw 2 figures crouching near the fence line. And one of them was Karen. Wearing all black. Holding a pair of wire cutters. I almost laughed out loud. She was really going to sabotage my fence. On camera. This was going to be fun. I sat back in my chair, watching the security feed with a grin as Karen fumbled with the wire cutters. She crouched low, probably thinking she was some kind of stealth operative, but every movement screamed clueless amateur. I was almost tempted to grab some popcorn. Then, as expected, she messed up. The moment her gloved hand brushed against the fence, a tiny spark flickered in the night. It wasn't even a full zap, just enough to make her yelp and drop the cutters. She stumbled backward, flailing her arms, and tripped over a tree root so spectacularly that she face-planted into the dirt. I could barely hold back my laughter. Karen, on the other hand, was furious. She scrambled back to her feet, pointed at the fence like it had personally insulted her, and stormed back to her car. Her accomplice, whoever the poor soul was, trailed after her, looking like he deeply regretted his life choices. The next morning, I forwarded the footage to my lawyer. And just for fun, I sent a short clip to a couple of neighbors who were getting tired of Karen's antics. Within an hour, the video was all over town. By noon, Karen was at my doorstep. She didn't knock. She didn't wait. She just started screaming. Asterisk asterisk, how dare you record me, asterisk asterisk, she shrieked, her face red with fury. You set me up. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. I set you up? Lady, you trespassed on my land and tried to cut my fence. You're lucky I didn't have you arrested last night. Karen's jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. I was conducting an investigation. This was a social experiment to test the reaction of the community to unsafe fencing. I almost choked. A what? A social experiment, she repeated, like that somehow made her crime more reasonable. And now, because of your harassment and public humiliation, I am suing you for emotional distress. I stared at her. Then I did something that made her even angrier. I laughed. Good luck with that, I said, shutting the door in her face. But Karen? Oh, she wasn't bluffing. A week later, I got the official notice. She had actually filed a lawsuit in small claims court, demanding thousands of dollars for the mental anguish and defamation she claimed I had caused her. My lawyer nearly fell out of his chair laughing. She's arguing that your fence, your legal fence, has caused her severe emotional distress and that the community is irreparably damaged by your actions," he said, shaking his head. "And get this, she submitted testimonials from HOA members, most of whom don't even live near you." "Let me guess," I said. "No actual proof?" "Not a shred." I could have ignored it, let the judge toss it out without a second thought, but something about Karen's sheer arrogance made me want to see this through. If she wanted a fight, I'd give her one. Court day arrived, and Karen showed up dressed like she was about to argue a case in the Supreme Court: heels, power suit, a stack of dramatic-looking folders. She shot me a smug look as she sat down, like she had already won. The judge, an older woman who had clearly seen too much nonsense in her career, didn't waste time. "Ms. Karen, you are suing Mr. Carter for emotional distress caused by his property?" Karen nodded, dramatically sighing. "Yes, Your Honor. This man has built a dangerous, unsightly, and illegal electric fence that threatens the well-being of our community. I have suffered tremendously, the stress, the fear, the constant anxiety of knowing that fence exists." The judge held up a hand. "Do you have any actual evidence that this fence is unsafe?" Karen hesitated. "Well, I have testimonies from concerned neighbors." "Do any of these neighbors live adjacent to Mr. Carter's property?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "No," the judge said flatly. "Do you have any legal documentation proving that Mr. Carter's fence violates county regulations?" Karen swallowed hard. Well, it's clearly dangerous. He even posted a video online mocking me." I leaned forward. "You mean the video of you trespassing on my land in the middle of the night and trying to vandalize my property?" Karen turned red. "That was a setup, he entrapped me." The judge let out the world's longest sigh. "Ms. Karen," she said, rubbing her temples, "this case has no merit. The defendant's fence is legal, on his property, and does not fall under your HOA's jurisdiction. Your complaint is dismissed." "But…" dismissed, I barely held back my laughter as I walked out of the courtroom. But Karen, true to form, wasn't done yet. She stormed after me, her heels clacking angrily against the floor. "You think this is funny?" she spat, pointing a manicured finger at me. "You haven't won. I will not let you destroy everything we've built." I sighed, shaking my head. "Karen, go home." Her face contorted with rage, but this time, she didn't have a comeback. Instead, she stomped off to her car, nearly tripping over a curb in the process. I wanted to believe this was over. That this was the final chapter in Karen's ridiculous crusade. But later that night, my security cameras caught something even worse. This time, Karen hadn't come alone. This time, she brought reinforcements. That night, my security system alerted me to more movement on my property. When I checked the live feed, I didn't just see Karen. I saw 3 other people with her, all dressed in dark clothing, carrying spray paint cans and what looked like a crowbar. They weren't just here to whine about my fence this time. They were here to destroy it. I watched as they crept toward my barn, whispering among themselves. Then, with a dramatic flourish, Karen shook a can of spray paint and started scrawling something across the wood. The others followed, laughing like a bunch of teenagers on a vandalism spree. Unfortunately for them, they had forgotten one key detail. I had motion-activated floodlights. The second they stepped closer to the fence, the entire property lit up like a football stadium. Karen shrieked. One of her accomplices dropped the crowbar. Another tripped over his own feet and face-planted into the dirt. And just when things couldn't get any worse for them, the whoop of sirens echoed through the night. Turns out, the sheriff's department takes trespassing and vandalism pretty seriously. The officers caught Karen red-handed, literally, because she was still clutching the dripping spray paint can when they approached. She tried to talk her way out of it, spinning some nonsense about HOA authority, but the moment they searched her SUV and found a handwritten list of other targets to vandalize, the game was over. She was arrested on the spot. And just like that, her reign of terror collapsed. The next morning, the news spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. The HOA, now desperate to save face, held an emergency meeting and voted to remove Karen as president. The very people who once cowered under her rule were now leading the charge to erase every trace of her influence. Karen, humiliated and facing criminal charges, had no choice but to sell her house and leave town. The day she drove away, I stood on my porch, watching as her SUV disappeared down the road. Bill Henderson walked up beside me, nodding in approval. "Reckon that's the last we'll hear of her." "Let's hope," I said, taking a sip of my coffee. Sparky the goat wandered over, eyeing the fence like he was thinking about testing it again. I chuckled and patted his head. "Not today, buddy." At the end of it all, my fence was still standing. It was still legal. And most importantly, it was still none of Karen's damn business. But it does make you wonder, how far would a power-hungry HOA go just to control something that was never theirs to begin with? Have you ever felt powerless against HOA, or a real-life Karen? Share your experiences below. Let's see who had it worse.